why isn't over $1 billion a year in the state gasoline tax and the federal gasoline tax that comes back to Louisiana every year? Why can't we make that work for a state the size of ours? Nobody's asking that. And so they keep finding ways to steal money out of other pockets in Louisiana. And I've been thinking about that. I think I want to do the homework to find out how many pockets have they taken money out of. We know a few. We know that they're leveraging money out of the unclaimed property fund of the state at the tune of $15 million a year for I-49 that they're using basically to just fund all the studies. And so this is somehow we got from managing what we had to a deficit of 34 billion. And if anybody out there is as irritated by taking money that we should put to other purposes in Louisiana to build roads, then email the governor. That's what I found you can do is go on his website and just email him, please veto HB 514.
Oh yeah, and John, go ahead, John.
Yeah, let me just say, a friend of mine who doesn't live in Shreveport lives south of here, not too far from I-49 in another parish, and no doubt uses 49 to get into town. He's told a friend of mine, so this is a little bit hearsay. He says that two politicians, I'll go ahead and use their name, Commissioner Mario Chavez, who is a otherwise wonderful guy. He's a friend of mine on a lot of issues, not on this one. And Commissioner Roy Burrell have individually both told my buddy that there will only be 7 family units affected by the highway coming through Allendale. Only 7 homes will be moved. And he's heard that from them. And because they are elected commissioners, they give an impression that they know what they're talking about. But it sounds more like the BS that people are hearing from the ad agency, the small town Shreveport ad agency that's been hired to go around and try to put some lipstick on this pig. And that's the guy who gets up and says, we'll help you with your applications for money to move if you have trouble filling out the forms. Well, we'll hold the door for you guys if you want to leave, so it won't hit you in the rear end. Yeah. But I think we could maybe spend some time debunking. There's just so much BS coming from that $100,000 campaign to make these people miserable for the rest of the time that this is up for discussion. But there's no way they can build an interstate highway through a neighborhood and only affect 7 houses or 7 units. I mean, who would want to live next door or across the street from a highway construction zone while they're building it? I was told it would only today. Versa Clark, and he's been public on this, so he's published on it, was saying on the Facebook page that what was he saying? It could only take maybe just 2 or 3 years to build the highway. That elevated highways are quick and easy to build. And I was thinking, hasn't he seen this? Didn't he watch the last one where they connected 3132 or 220, excuse me, to 49 and built that big arching? That took years just to build that little bit. And he says that the the Barksdale Gate project will be finished next year, and that's just not what I'm hearing from NLCOG. But I don't know if they make this stuff up in a session such as this. Do they sit around on Zoom and just come up with stuff, or is there an official sort of lie that gets written and
But you
passed
know what,
out?
John? This is the thing about it, even as you said that, the people who are talking all this, they're not even highway builders.
Right. They,
You know, I mean, that really? Okay, Versa Clark, you haven't built a highway, you haven't thrown any concrete anywhere. If you have, come throw some right here at Ford and Allen and fix this big dump hole I'm driving off in. But I mean, most of these people who are talking about how long this highway is going to be and what it's going to do, they're not even highway builders. They don't know anything about this. I don't even know where they're getting their information from.
well,
You know,
no,
it's-
and I told him on the Facebook page, maybe last night or this morning, I said, Versa, he was scolding me not to lead you guys astray. I was like, I've learned all this from my association with them. I didn't make anything up, and it's all stuff that we've read about. And I said, they formed 12 years ago, before Versa had ever thought about this, as far as I can tell. And yet he's an expert on it, and Dorothy isn't, in his mind anyway. And I like him. He's a nice guy, but he's just wrong. And he's so wrong that he doesn't know that he's wrong, and he doesn't have anybody that he'll listen to that'll tell him that he's wrong.
What is that, that legislator? It's kind of a famous quote, but he said, you're entitled to your opinion, but you're not entitled to your facts. The facts are the facts. And so there's a lot of opinions. I thought it might be interesting just for people to know that, we built I-49, or the state, and built I-49 from I-220 on the north side of Shreveport, 34 miles to the Arkansas border. It took about 36 years to do that.
Right.
And they took a lot of different pockets of money to get it done. Cedric Glover informed us that that the state and the local governments, which that's the local governments tend to look at the state to provide their share, but the state provided about 60% of the cost. The feds only about 40%, which goes against what everybody thinks, that when we started freeways, the federal government paid 90%, the local paid 10%. So the cost over those 34 years to build that stretch, 34 miles, $680 million. About 120 million of that went into that kind of rinky-dink looking interchange that took a number of years to build to connect I-220. And so what we're talking about is building 3.5 miles. The cost keeps going up. It's currently 700 million, but the Secretary, Sean Wilson, said by the time it could be funded, it's going to be $1 billion project. And so
Right.
what kind of an investment strategy is that? Sure, it's great in terms of we're looking at $5 to $10 million a mile between cities, which is really where the value is generated, is between cities. And then we invest to cut up cities with, what is it, $200 to $350 million a mile. And those investments make cities poorer. And so it's kind of like, we need to stop. Roy Burrell's right. Or Dorothy, they're already digging, and it's a hole that they're digging for.
Right, okay.
Where all the money goes, they're just going to pour money and bury it, is what they're doing with the Barksdale Gate. I know for a fact, because I sat in the NLCOG meeting where this was announced, discussed, and over the years, they're going to take $1 million a year for 12 years out of Shreveport, Bossier Parish, and Caddo Parish, the county governments. They'll each chip in $250,000 from their budget once a year for 12 years that it takes to build the Barksdale gate, so that Barksdale has egress and ingress from I-20. And it's a 12-year project. Well, this guy on Facebook just says, no, it's not. I heard it'll be done in 2 or 3 years, and completely left out the part where I was making the point that it's a 13.3% local, meaning micro local us in Shreveport, Caddo, Bossier, and Bossier Parish are paying 13.3% of a gate entrance that's being built on the other side of the river. And I would think that doesn't bode well for this $800 million project. I would think we're going to look at least a 13% local match, if not more, that we'll have to come up with over the 17 years that the government says it'll take them to build that project. It's unbelievable the money they talk about, and the time, as if this is a jiffy solution. We'll announce that we're starting and this will fix everything within a couple or 3 years.
Yeah, and I'm looking at with Versa Clark. He actually came back. He said, when President Biden visited Tulsa recently, he announced what his intentions are for those areas and communities that have been affected by freeway intrusion. The infrastructure bill hasn't been voted on yet, or I would be able to tell you how much money be set aside for business development in those areas, including Cedar Grove. So, and
Shreveport, Cedar Grove, yeah. As if they're just going to say, well, here's some money, and people will say, oh, I'd love to start a business in that area right along an interstate where no one wants to live. What was it called? It's a border vacuum where nothing can survive and where no one wants to go. You don't want to cross the border.
Yeah,
Roosevelt, what you're just pointing out is it's almost comical to think that, okay, we acknowledge that Cedar Grove was divided, and we get it. There's an opportunity, but since we divided Cedar Grove, we got an opportunity to get some money. But then you turn around and say, well, we're going to divide Allendale now. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like, hold on. And so I put up Amy Stelly's interview that we did with her. I said, you might want to meet somebody. It's somebody I actually put on here. I have someone I think you would like to meet.
Right. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, because it's like you said, is it computing? Is it?
Yeah, Versa's not really that, he's
not a dumb guy.
No, he's an educated guy. He just believes what he believes. And so that's what I thought was funny on that thread, without belaboring it too much. He actually said, because it was a thread about what happened in Greenwood, in the Tulsa area. And he said, well, that actually happened in Cedar Grove and Shreveport. But, and once you have to say, but, he was saying this destroyed Cedar Grove. He agrees with those of us who say it was a mistake, but instead of to remediate it, he's like, just throw some more money on it. And I'm sure if somebody dumps enough money, somebody will take it and start some kind of terrible business that won't make it. You can't get people to live there. Those are basically trap houses that still are standing somewhat along where the interstate was built. It's a really kind of a no-go zone. That's horrible.
Cedar Grove, it was a great community. I mean, it had a lot of things that people could walk to business-wise. But really I'm so glad that you directed him to Amy Stelly, because Amy has told, we've now, with Amy's help, formed a statewide coalition for transportation policy and practices changing. And Amy said, we're the example of what happens when you run a freeway through a neighborhood. And so in Allendale, y'all actually you can avoid the mistake that was made in New Orleans. And so here we are working to avoid the mistake, to build a a business boulevard and for 60 million versus $1 billion for a freeway that does harm. But Amy is just wonderful in encouraging us. And then that example, go look at Tremay, go talk to Amy. Dorothy lived in Tremay. She can tell
Right.
you what it was like.
Yep.
So why would we want to do that in Shreveport?
Yeah. Wow. I mean,
Yeah.
it just it boggles the mind. I'm sitting here reading, and like we've been saying, Versa Clark is a very smart guy. I've read a lot of his articles, and I loved a lot of his ideas about the infrastructure and about how internet access is an infrastructure now, right? It's
I
like
agree with him on
like
that.
the
Yeah.
telephone, right? Internet
Right.
access is like the telephone now. It's like the landline back in the day. You have to have it. If you don't have it, you are being left out of what's going on right now in America, right? You are considered cut off from America almost.
Right.
And how and what he's saying about Cedar Grove and what he's saying about Tulsa, about how the freeway went through, but he still wants to put it through Allendale.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I
Me
mean,
either. I don't see how they don't get it. I mean, they're looking right at it, but they're not getting it, or they're just dismissing it, because when a person wants something, they want it, and it doesn't matter how they get it. He could be the one say, "Oh, I get it, but you know what? We want this freeway to come through because this is what I believe about this freeway. This is what I believe this freeway will bring." You know, I mean, when people want what they want, they're going to go after it and get it. Period.
Yeah.
yeah,
Whether it's good for them or not, too. They'll hurt
There you
Absolutely.
go.
themselves to get what they want sometimes. It's horrible.
Absolutely.
Some
Dorothy,
people. Go ahead, Kim. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, Dorothy, that's such a wise observation, because we talk about, you can see the harm all along I-20 and all along I-49 within the city. And then you've got this determined belief in the freeways that seems to just blind our leadership. And I don't know if Versa is coming out of the blindness or not. Maybe he is, what he's saying about the new opportunity. But
I think he is a little bit. He's really is a nice person. He's always been gentlemanly to me, even when we disagree. And he's well-spoken, educated guy. He was an educator in
Albuquerque, I
New
think it was.
Mexico, right,
Yeah,
in Albuquerque. And so I like him, as long as we don't talk about this subject. But it's almost as if he's so, and you're just so married to the idea of building a highway as a 21st century solution, as he calls it. And I'm like, Versa, no, that's actually mid 20th century.
Okay.
Yeah.
Solution was building a highway through a black neighborhood was a solution to a problem from white people had a problem in the 20th century, and they solved it with a highway. And you're soaking in it, man. You can drive down any of our interstates and see exactly what happens when you do it. Well, he just can't see it. But I love you, Versa, if you're listening.
Yeah,
I think you're a fine man. I really like you. I just think you need to sit down with us and think some more.
Yeah, and we're gonna keep reaching out to him. We're gonna keep reaching out to him, and and that's the way I kind of look at when I talk to people. Is I want to, I'm not gonna lie, Kim, you had this learning and doing community thing is seeping into my bones, because that's everything I try to do from now on, is to try to get things that are not just, you don't have to trust me, because I have a theory about what I like to call a trust circle. A trust circle is a circle of people that you trust, right? And what happens is you trust these people for different reasons, but they're in your trust circle. Small towns have very, very big trust circles, because small towns, you have relationships with them, right? And when you have a relationship with somebody, you kind of trust their word because you know their grandmama, aunt, and auntie, and all of them, and you trust them. So now your trust is so far embedded with with somebody, and that's how you build your trust circle, right?
Mm.
And for somebody to infiltrate your trust circle, you're gonna have to overwhelm them. Because I always bring up an NPR report from Shaka Vedantam and Hidden Brain, where he said that you would tell a person a fact, and if that person don't trust you, that person will look to disprove your fact before they look to prove your fact. You feel me? So if I tell you that the sky is not really blue, what you're seeing is the sun and the rain clouds and all of this science stuff, you're gonna be like, let me go find out this dude. I know he lying to me. You're gonna try to find out. You're gonna try to figure out if I'm lying to you before you figure out, oh, he's telling the truth. Right? You're gonna Google everything to disprove what I said instead of proving what I said. So what you have to do is you have to bombard them with information that does not relate to you, but you may hit something that they actually trust. You may find somebody that they actually trust their word. You may find a professor or school. Oh, I'm an LSU fan. Send them an LSU document that proves what you're trying to say. And they were like, well, it's LSU. I got to trust LSU, right? But you just don't know. But you have to give them the facts that you have, right?
Roosevelt, this concept that we've really originated with Allendale Strong of a learning, doing community. A community that comes together that all think alike is not going to innovate. In fact, they're not going to see the wholeness or the truth in the matter. But the more diverse a group that learns together, and not just comes together to learn, but comes together first to be friends, to care about one another. And then the cool thing about that, if you care about somebody first and prioritize that, then your differences are not polarizing. Your differences and different perspectives become assets. Mm-hmm. And you can then begin to more completely see the truth that is out there. And I love that about Allendale Strong, in that the leadership is Allendale. There's no question about the leadership of this organization is residents of Allendale. But those that have been attracted to it are very diverse. We have, certainly we are multiracial. We have age difference. We've got education difference. We've got income difference. And it's pretty cool. The more that we grow in that way, and valuing the diversity of opinions, the more we get to what a friend of mine says. Mostly what's going on right now is people argue to win, and what we're doing in Allendale is arguing to agreement. That's different.
I like that.
Oh yeah,
that's good, Kim. I'm telling you, that's a great analogy, but yes, and even with other organizations that I've become involved with, or like the Ledbetter Lakeside Association, I always mention about we are learning and doing community, and they want it. They said, we want to learn. We want to do that. What do you want to learn about? We got to come in together so we can communicate with each other, so we can share the results with each other, so we can be able to learn from each other, because I don't know everything. You know something that I don't know. So once we bring all our learning tools together, then we are better, because just like you say, the diversity makes us come together so that we can understand each other or the learning process. And I love that you brought that in, us being a learning and doing community, seeing the needs that need to be met in our community, so that is great. And people, I believe learning and doing community is something that's just going to flourish and just go out, just not in Allendale, but throughout our city. Because once they see this and once they understand and once we share the facts with them, then they'll know, okay, yeah, these people really are learning. And we're just not learning it, but we're putting action behind what we have learned. So we're doing it as well.
Yeah, and Dorothy, you brought an issue to the table just in seeing things about gentrification, and that's something that that as much as across the country as we've had efforts to redevelop parts of cities, most of them have ended up in gentrification.
Yes.
And the learning and doing community, we've talked about it. There's more yet to learn and to do, but to have a vision, vision's important, but to have a vision that through learning and doing that the residents of Allendale can lead and participate in the renewal of the neighborhood. That's different than our current leadership paradigm, which would be, we want to create a situation that attracts big money and big developers. And that is the formula for gentrification. And so to do, we've got a good friend and colleague and Strong Towns and Chuck Marone, and to learning and doing and incremental growth and those two things fit together. And so I see a lot left for us to do once we get the boulevard, and
Yes.
and other things that we're working on.
I mean, and let's get into that gentrification thing. And the reason I want to get into that gentrification thing is because I stay in the Atlanta area, which is famous for their gentrification. Their gentrification started right after the Olympics, and it was good intentions, bad timing. I say good intentions because a lot of what they did was they wanted to clean up the area around the Olympic area, right? And a lot of times when we talk about cleaning up, what we talk about is pretty much moving out the people, the undesirables, right? There's a famous cartoon I love, which this cartoonist, he said that, the people in Brooklyn, oh, we need to help out the homeless, and somebody said, oh, we're going to build homes for the homeless. Said, no, we need to help them out, right? So that's really what, when we, a lot of times when we talk about this, gentrification, it's usually started out with good intentions, right? It's usually started out saying, oh, we want to fix the neighborhood. Oh, but the people in it right now, we want to move them out, right?
Right. Yeah.
And one of the things that I believe, and I think I've said this on a couple of to a couple of friends, is that a lot of people like to talk about public safety, right? And I believe that public safety is something that you have to start planning out years out. Public safety is not just police. Public safety is not just protecting your house and protecting your property. I believe that public safety starts with conflict resolution training, anger management training, and financial literacy training. Why do I say that? A lot of times most of the time, crimes happen because of the lack of finance, the lack of emotional intelligence. Somebody get mad, somebody get pissed off, they start fighting, they shoot each other, right? Or anger management, no anger management skills, right? And follow me because I'm getting somewhere. A lot of the people that they see these neighborhoods that they say are undesirable. That's the first thing they bring up is public safety. And their whole thing is, let's make it safe. Let's send out all the people that are there. Instead of saying, let's make it safe, right? Let's look at the people that are there and understand what their problems are and why do their problems. You know, a lot of times, my mother said something to me the other day. She said she bought a car on a whim. She walked in the dealership and said, "Give me that car." They're like, "What color?" "That car." What kind?" "That car." "How much the payments?" "Whatever I need." One thing, because she didn't know how to buy a car. She had never bought a car before. Nobody ever told her how to buy a car. She didn't even think she could get the car. She was so surprised they gave her the car that she was just like, "Oh wow," she was just ecstatic. And that's what you hear and see a lot of times in these underdeveloped neighborhoods, is that we do not have the overall experience of doing certain things that other people take for granted.
Yeah.
I saw a guy the other day. He said, "Oh, why do you need an ID?" He said, "You need an ID to go on the airplane. You need an ID to get a hotel room. You need an ID to get a rental car. You need an ID to buy a house. You need an ID to buy a car." I said, I can point out somebody that's never been on an airplane, never rented a car, never left town, never been on a plane, never bought a house, and never bought a car.
Mhm.
I know a lot of those people. All right. And it's because we have grown up in a situation of generational poverty, where some people have grown up in a situation of generational wealth, where those things are always there to have those decisions those things have been done by their parents and passed on to them. Well, my parents never had a house, right?
Yeah, you know, Roosevelt, everything you said is right on the money. But there's one thing I'd like to add to that is if you're looking at public safety, the best public safety you've got is a neighbor.
Yeah.
And more of those neighbors that are connected. And this comes through learning from the work of community renewal in those disadvantaged or neighborhoods, is that there are a lot of good people there. But over time, just like we talked earlier about the decline of Allendale as seen through Rosie, but a lot of, you know, one of the things that grows as crime infiltrates and generational poverty issues is fear. And fear leads to isolation. And then you've got good people living in a fearful environment that are isolated from each other. And so the first thing in terms of a way back is that we must connect those good people who can't, who don't know that they're there in the neighborhood. In fact, that is the path back from the area that Dorothy lives in, that was the highest crime area. The reason crime is down 65% since before the Friendship House, the reason for that is the neighbors. You know, community renewal can say Friendship House program, you know, that was the key, but the reality is that the work of our community coordinator living in the neighborhood, one of their responsibilities is to walk, get to know people, and then begin to connect those good people that have been left to the misery of isolation because they're fearful. And you start to connect good people in a bad place. And that is the first step to turning a neighborhood around to become the safest place in Shreveport. And I've learned this too. The more I study the issues for cities, the more I'm seeing research pointing to community is the answer. Community is the answer for safety. Community is the answer for economic development, for health, for so many things, and we've kind of lost community. And so in Allendale, one of the amazing parts of the miracle, we got a community, and you've got neighboring. There's challenges relationally with neighbors, but there's a community, and that's that I would like to add to everything that you said, which is absolutely correct.
Yeah, and think about it. A gentrified neighborhood usually has a community, almost like a neighborhood. What's the word I'm looking for? A neighborhood organization, right? They usually have a gentrified neighborhood down in Houston tried to get the turkey leg shack. I don't know if you guys ever heard of the turkey leg shack in Houston. But Turkey Leg Shack is a minority-owned turkey leg restaurant, and they tried to get it shut down. Right? They gentrified the neighborhood. The Turkey Leg Shack had been there. The neighborhood behind it was becoming gentrified, where a bunch of people had moved in and kind of changed the neighborhood. Well, they didn't like that this restaurant that probably none of them, frequented, was right there in their neighborhood. Right? Even though they had moved there before they got there. So what they did was they got together and they said that we're going to shut it down, and we're going to say it had a smoke ordinance, a noise ordinance, and something else. And that's kind of, it's like you said, Kim, they got together as a community and they started making decisions to try to protect what they saw protecting their investment. And you're right. That's one of the things that we can take from this whole gentrification thing is their sense of community and how they get together. Now, we don't want to start kicking out turkey leg shacks. I may not eat meat anymore, but turkey legs sound pretty good right now. So I mean, and John, I mean, we talked a lot about, like, what's one of the things that you think makes people want to stay in a neighborhood?
Well, that's a good question, because in these modern times, I don't think neighborhoods are really that attractive as they were when my grandparents were creating the Highland neighborhood with their neighbors, and you had the small shops. I mean, imagine if you could just walk out your door, go down the street and grab a sandwich and a beer, down the street, or go get your bike worked on in a bicycle shop. I don't see that as much anymore as I did when I was a kid. And now I think people stay because it's convenient, maybe, to get to work or to get to grandma's house or something. But that's the difference. Allendale, my friends in Allendale are very intentional. They chose to buy a home and to participate in building it. And they chose to live in that community, and it's loosely knitted. It's not terribly organized, but it is organized around community and about the choice to live there. And it's a great location, and with a modern business boulevard nearby, that's the kind of place you can walk to. Like Dorothy says, she'd like to have a bicycle shop with a kitchen in the back where she could make sandwiches and other meals.